Welcome to Tuesday. Jesus. There's no reason for the nameplate to move that quick. Thank you. Here is your wrestling news. Get 'em up. Vince McMahon hated a WWE Extreme Rules moment. Tessa Blanchard reportedly demands $150,000 to return the Impact title. And a WWE star returns to TV on last night's Raw. We'll get to that in a bit. So the general consensus coming out of Extreme Rules was some really good wrestling, but some bizarre booking. And that opinion isn't just with the fans, but it's with people behind the scenes as well. Vince McMahon was very outspoken about one particular moment, to the point where he actually edited it out of the broadcast. So this comes from the eye for an eye match between Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio. We heard just a few weeks before this, or maybe the week before this, that there was going to be CGI and a cinematic wrestling experience around this one, and we would see the eye pulled out of a head via computer-generated graphics. That ended up not being the case. They shot the match on Sunday afternoon, and they used prosthetics and makeup effects to give the impression of Rey Mysterio losing his eye. And it's been suggested that it was going to be quite a gruesome image, actually, to have like the eye coming out of Rey Mysterio's head using horror makeup style things. None of that we actually ended up seeing. This is because, according to PW Insider, Vince McMahon hated the effects on the eye that popped out of Rey Mysterio's head, so much so that he actually didn't want it in the broadcast at all. So all that we got was what we saw, which was Rey having his hand over his eye. We very briefly see an eye like appearing through his hand, through his fingers like that, and that's all we got. We were meant to get more. I like to think that we missed out on having Rey Mysterio running around ringside with the eye hanging out of his head going, whoa, while Seth Rollins continues to projectile vomit. We're fine with vomit, but not with eyes hanging out. So Vince hated it, so actually cut the whole bit from broadcast, so we didn't even see it. I kind of get it, because I think some of the best stuff in horror films is stuff that isn't seen. And take, for example, Reservoir Dogs. Great film. I know it's not a horror film, but great film, Reservoir Dogs. How so many people are convinced that in that film you see a guy get his ear cut off, when actually you don't. It's intimated with camera work and effects and such like that, but you don't actually see the ear get cut off. But there was a whole generation of people that thought that they did. And sometimes it's not what you see that's even more frightening, and I guess that's kind of what Vince was hoping to do when he realised the effects were bad. Like, let's just not show anything and just give the impression. Maybe. But shame for all that makeup and effects to go to waste, because we didn't end up seeing any of it. We just saw a lot of Seth Rollins' breakfast. That's pretty much the height of the horror from the horror show, among other things. It's been a funny old time for WWE in general. One of the big things that Vince McMahon has been dealing with is the ratings, and how every week I feel like we come close to record lows for Monday Night Raw. And personally, I'm gutted. Drew McIntyre is a solid WWE champion, and this isn't the run that he deserved after all that he fought through. This isn't the run that he deserved at all. I think Becky Lynch deserved more on her way out as well, but I think that Edge deserved more in his comeback, but it's out of the hands of people. It's a major act of God with that one. But the ratings have been quite the talking point. But for Vince McMahon, according to WrestlingNews.co, this isn't something that is worrying Vince too much. A WWE source told Wrestling News that Vince is doing what he can by putting on pay-per-view matches on Raw and SmackDown, but USA and Fox are happy, and everyone knows things will get better when we can get people back in arenas. This is what he thinks right now, and he's not sweating these numbers. So surprisingly, Vince isn't too stressed about it, but he's still very hands-on with the product as it is. We found out from PW Insider that WWE Raw tapings were quite extensively delayed yesterday, as they were frantically rewriting big segments of the show, possibly due to people who couldn't be there and who were factored into it, partly due to, according to some rumour and innuendo, down to the reaction to Extreme Rules has meant some things are being reworked. So he's still partial to tearing up a script that he doesn't like, but in terms of the figures for Raw, apparently Vince McMahon's not sweating it. Let's talk about Tessa Blanchard, shall we? So Blanchard's back in the news today, following a tweet sent out by Belt fan Dan, aka Dan Beltzer. Now, Dan Beltzer is basically your go-to guy for wrestling belt related news. He's a really good egg as well. It was Dan that unveiled back last year the new US Championship, sort of 6 months before they actually ended up putting it onto TV. So there's previous with Dan and knowing his worth when it comes to the belts. And somebody asked the question of Dan, quite simply, did Impact get their world title back from Tessa, or is it a new one? And Dan responded with, Impact got a new set of belts. Tessa reportedly wanted $150,000 to return the old one. This is kind of in keeping with how the relationship between Tessa Blanchard and Impact Wrestling massively broke down. So she was off TV during the last 2 sets of tapings when she was champion, didn't want to come to the venue, didn't want to send any promos in either, so she was terminated from her contract. And by the sounds of it, when they said, okay, you're done, thank you, can we have the belt back? Tessa went, yeah, sure, that'll be $150,000, please. I thought we might get back to a system to prevent this from happening again, like in the days of the National Wrestling Alliance, where you put a deposit down when you became a champion, and when you lost the belt, you got your deposit back. Kind of a sweetener for people who were holding the belt, that when they lost the belt, they got a big wad of cash as well. So maybe we go back to that system to stop this from happening again. Also, on the subject of the Impact Wrestling Championships, another little factoid regarding the belts on Impact, Moose's TNA Championship. That's not the original TNA Championship. That's in fact a replica belt from Pakistan that they've made. Looks good. It suits him as well. Facts about belts, you're welcome. We have an update on 2 former WWE stars, 2 that were released back in April, 2 that in their short time in WWE showed us the greatest love we've ever known. We were burning up inside the love of Mike and Maria Kanellis, but the love wasn't rescinded, and they ended up leaving WWE following the layoffs in April. Mike Kanellis has spoke quite a bit on Twitter about his feelings about WWE. He did a video the other day where he was driving and he was talking about how this was a route that he would take when he was in the business a few years ago, and he would take this route whilst dreaming of being in WWE, and he said, now I'm taking this route and I'm unhappy here in WWE. This was a video that he shot while he was still there. Never released it, but released it just the other day to sort of show you where he was mentally during all that time. Also, he responded to a fan on Twitter regarding his rehabilitation. Now, the general belief was that WWE paid for Mike Kanellis to go into rehab, and Mike tweets the following: I never went to rehab. My wife was my rehab. I recovered on the road. They never paid for my rehab, and they also never reached out to me once. Not a single person in management ever contacted me to see if I needed help or if I was doing okay in my recovery. All credit goes to my wife. So what is next for Mike and Maria Kanellis? Well, they appeared on the ROH Strong podcast just the other day, talking about their release from WWE and lamenting on the good times they had in Ring of Honor, and it was in the week by week Ring of Honor YouTube show as well, where they talked a bit more about Mike and Maria, and it certainly feels like that Mike and Maria could end up back in Ring of Honor. That seems to be the trajectory right now. And now that the 90-day no-competes are now done, people who were released in April can go as and where they want. Don't be surprised if Mike and Maria rock up in Ring of Honor. And finalimo, the post-Extreme Rules WWE Raw saw the first appearance in a wrestling ring for 2020 for Mustafa Ali. Finally getting back in the ring. Ali hasn't been seen for quite a while, taken away, and there were plans to reveal him, we understand, as the hacker on SmackDown. That never ended up transpiring, very much went the way of GTV and just vanished. So Ali was quietly moved to Raw. We didn't know what would come of him. And then it was last night on Raw where he teamed up with Cedric Alexander and Ricochet to face the Hurt Business in a 6-man tag. Ali even got the win in that match as well, spoiler. But I won't say any more about Monday Night Raw here, but you can find out everything that went down on Raw Graded. It's on the Cultaholic YouTube channel. In a little while's time, we'll break down everything that went down on Monday Night Raw, you and I. And Ross will be here as well with the WTF moments from Raw too. Some of the silliest stuff that happened on Raw, Ross will track that. But welcome back to Mustafa Ali. He is a guy that has potential for days. He has so much in the locker. And to see him performing on Raw was just genuinely wonderful. Nothing but love for Mustafa Ali. I feel like there is a star there, should they get behind them now, and maybe now is the time. I live in hope. I live in hope. Somebody said to me the other day, Tom, are you an optimist? And I said, I hope so. I hope so. That's it for the news today. I encourage you, if you don't do so already, to subscribe to the Cultaholic Wrestling Podcast. Every single day, we do a news briefing in the morning, so you can find out everything happening in the wrestling news with your ears and not your eyes, I guess. And in today's news podcast, I have an exclusive chat with Mark Kapani, who's the wrestler formerly known as Muhammad Hassan. Now, Mark and Shad Gaspard wrote a comic book called Assassin and Son. And the plan was they were going to release a deluxe edition later this year. Of course, Shad has passed away, as we know, and they're releasing a tribute edition to Shad with the money going to Shad's family. And if you listen to the podcast this morning, my chat with Mark is on there. We talk about his relationship with Shad Gaspard. We talk about the making of Assassin and Son. And of course, we tell you how you can help support the family of Shad Gaspard. It's a really great chat with Mark. And I hope you download the podcast and check it out. Be very kind of you. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.